So what is Onstar? Onstar is an in-vehicle system. We are typically featured for the user interface as 3 buttons. In the U.S., primarily those buttons are located on the rear view mirror, but in the Europe launch, it's my understanding that only 10% will be on the rear view mirror. The buttons will be in easy reach of both the driver and any front seat occupants. And our purpose is to keep this simple. You'll see a white button, which is primarily for voice commands, and also to cancel a call that might be generated on the blue button. It is not possible to cancel the red button key press. In addition to being able to contact 999 or 112 with the SOS button, there's also the ability to have a connection to public safety if there's a moderate to severe crash in the vehicle, and then that connection would be automatic without any intervention on the part of the occupants who may be severely injured. We also have the ability for a customer to call us on a toll-free number if they need to have their vehicle unlocked. Let's say a child is locked in the vehicle and is very urgent that we unlock that vehicle. And we also will work with police forces on stolen vehicle assistance. So how it works, we heard, those of you who were in the previous presentation, we heard about GPS. GPS is a very accurate location technology. We have had calls where the vehicle has been stopped on a railroad track, and we have been able to give that precise information to the emergency call center to the point where they have been able to halt trains. So that is how accurate it is. So a connection is made from the vehicle either through a key press or a crash. We're going to get that precise GPS location, and then with a voice connection and a data connection, we're going to be using a local mobile network operator. Now, a lot of people will ask, well, why is that any better than a cell phone? We have found with the externally mounted skyward facing antenna that the connection is often much better. In very rural places of the US and Canada, there have been situations where people have remarked that no one had a cell signal, yet the Onstar call was able to get through. And in our current model, and the model I hope will be adopted here in the UK, is we are sending those calls to a specially trained emergency advisor at an Onstar call center. That emergency advisor will provide additional services to the occupants of the vehicle that I'll describe later in the presentation. And then through our very precise mapping database, we are able to connect to the appropriate public safety answering point, in this case that being BT and through 999. But if you think about other places in Europe and you think about the US, Canada, and Mexico, we have over 8,000 boundaries in that PSAP database. So on any given intersection, we can pinpoint which agency has jurisdiction, and through one key press, one click, our live advisor is connecting to the public safety agency with jurisdiction very, very quickly. In this next series of slides, I'm going to give you an idea how just simple the system is to use. I showed you the 3 buttons. This is an actual scenario that happened in Florida, and the call was 19 minutes long. And during this call, there were many passerbys that were reporting a vehicle being driven erratically, going through intersections, going through red lights, running off the roadway with 2 small children in the vehicle. So we've taken just a snippet of the call to give you a flavor for how easy it is to use.
Onstar emergency, this is Kim.
My mom's going around my storehouse, so I think she's lost. I don't know what the dream was.
Okay, you're on North Sumter Boulevard.
But we're not going in the right way. She's not going to our house. We're lost.
Well, where's your mom at?
She's in the front. She's driving, but she's not going the right way. She's going straight.
Is she okay?
No, she's closing her eyes a little bit.
Okay, give me just one moment. I'm going to go ahead and get the police on the line for you, okay?
Okay.
Make sure you have your seatbelt on. Okay, stay in your seatbelt. I'm going to get the police out there to help your mom, okay?
Okay.
Okay, one moment. Okay, she's at Sumter and Tropicare.
Sumter and Tropicare?
Yes.
Tell them that they're very scared.
I believe we know where you are. I've got officers looking for you, okay? So you just tell me when you see one.
I see the policeman. She just won't stop.
Okay, so you see the policeman now?
Yeah, we're right behind us. No, she
Is she stopping for the policeman?
Yeah, she stopped right now.
Okay, so you're stopped and the policeman's there with you?
Are you okay? What's going on? Okay, darling, we got you. Good job.
Carrie, this is Kim from Onstar. You did a great job, okay? Please know we're here whenever you need us. You have a good day.
So it turned out the mother was having a diabetic emergency, and in addition to the 7-year-old girl, Carrie, there was also a 2-year-old in a car seat, in the back seat. So very easy to use. It turned out she picked up how to use it just based on a dealership overview with her parents. So in much the same way we heard about a 2-year-old calling 999 and knowing how to use it, this little girl knew how to use it in a very critical situation. Probably our flagship service is our automatic crash response, because this is a situation where many people are not going to make a 999 call anyway due to the fact that they're seriously injured. So the ability for the vehicle to make that automatic connection on behalf of the occupants is absolutely critical. So what happens is the vehicle will make the connection using high priority access through what we call cleared numbers in the cellular system. It will connect to the live advisor with important information about the vehicle. We'll also know if that vehicle may have an alternative propulsion system. So in this case, you can see that this vehicle has a CNG system. So when we call 999, we will be sure to mention what the fuel system, whether it be electric, hybrid, is on that vehicle, so that responders en route to the scene are preparing on how they're going to safely extricate if that's required. We're also going to be able to say whether the airbag's deployed, whether there has been multiple impacts, the maximum reported delta velocity or the severity of the impact, whether the vehicle may have rolled over, and very importantly, the very precise GPS location. We will also relay street names in case the PSAP does not have access to mapping where they can plot that location. Very important, because we are integrated into the electrical architecture of the vehicle, if responders get on scene and cannot locate the vehicle, we can sound the horn, we can flash the lights, we can make a beacon out of that vehicle, and when you get to the vehicle, if you can't gain access to the patient, we can unlock the doors. So it's very, very important that we have that continuous connection, not only for updating locations, but for the services we can assist public safety with when they get on scene. So we view working with public safety as a true partnership. And it's interesting in our early travels throughout Europe, when we're visiting the control centers, they're indicating to us, no one has come to us, no one has asked us, how can telematics help us? How will this interaction be streamlined? But ever since the beginning in 1996, when we launched Onstar, we have been a true partner with public safety. When we introduced an embedded system with the buttons on the mirror, we talked to law enforcement and others about distracted driving. We introduced in 2004 data from the vehicle, which what public safety was urging us to tell them, especially in no voice situations, how serious is this? Do we need to put air on standby? Medical evacuation, is it needed? Do we need to bring the jaws of life because the vehicle may have rolled over? So we have been listening. We also, in the U.S. and Canada, receive a feed if there's missing children. And we make sure that as people call in the area, we're alerting them so that they can be on the lookout. We have relationships with poison control for poisoning exposures. We worked with an expert panel of emergency physicians and EMS and 911 folks to take that raw data that we're currently giving them, and we're now able to do in the U.S. and Canada, and hopefully this will be the evolution here, what we call an injury severity prediction. So we can tell you if there's a very high probability of severe injuries. So if there's different levels of care that the patients can be transported to for a more successful outcome, we will relay that to you. 3 years ago, I'm very proud to say we began doing emergency medical dispatch. This is quite important because only about half of the public safety answering points that we deal with do emergency medical dispatch. So when that crash victim is bleeding excessively, we can give instruction on how to stop bleeding and other things. We can find out if anyone is pinned in the vehicle, if anyone's been thrown, if there's any chemicals that are leaking. All of that information is relayed to public safety. We also assist with stolen vehicles. We have the ability to locate the stolen vehicle. We have the ability to remotely block the ignition. I have gotten some questions since I've been here because some people are aware of the fact that we can slow vehicles down in the U.S., and we did bring that technology forward in 2008, quite some time after we launched the product. And that was at the urging of law enforcement to curtail high-speed pursuits. So there's different things that we have been able to bring forward. We also strive to get our advisors very well trained. And I talked about the emergency medical dispatch. We have now become an accredited center of excellence. So out of the 3,000 or 4,000 PSAPs that are doing emergency medical dispatch across 40 countries, there's about 2% of us that have that distinction. So again, I wanted to mention, again, we worked very closely when we launched electric vehicles. We went on a road trip to make sure that the fire service knew how to properly deal with those vehicles. We also take input from public safety on our advisor processes to make sure that they're very streamlined and they work with your operations. We maintain a very continuous dialogue. You may have met me last year when I was at this conference, but I've been working with the BAPCO board for many years, telling them about what we do, and we plan to be a presence here. Right after this, Andy mentioned that he and I are flying to Warsaw to participate in the European Emergency Number Association. Again, we want to put ourselves out there. In the U.S. and Canada and Mexico, we've developed websites, newsletters, all of which are educational materials for public safety. So our goal is to get to the right place, meaning the right place of jurisdiction, to get the right help, and to get you to the right location of the emergency at the right priority. So we're going to confirm that we have the right location when we call public safety. Again, we're going to be able to sound the horn, flash the lights. That's another way we can help law enforcement locate stolen vehicles that may thought to be hidden away in a garage, but we can sound the horn and make sure that they can be found. Filtering and triaging. I have a slide to talk about this, and when Andy talks about e-call across Europe, you're going to have some red flags go up in terms of how many of those red manual key presses are going to be inadvertent or false. And then Good Samaritans. I believe that it would be the same here if you have a crash in a busy intersection. You're going to get many, many calls on that crash. We have put into our system the ability to identify if we've already called you on the crash. so that we're not sending repeated calls into the 999 center and causing a burden unnecessarily. We're going to provide key information. We are going to do that in a concise and calm manner with our trained advisors. We will then conference public safety into the vehicle to speak directly to the occupants if they so desire. In many cases where we've been working for a long time, they are so confident in OnStar's trained capability that they don't even conference in. They trust that we are giving them a very clear synopsis of what is occurring and that we are staying on the line until help arrives. And that help could be up to 45 minutes, 2 hours in an off-road location that's difficult to access. We will help the occupants of the vehicle by calling loved ones, by notifying their place of employment that they're going to be late, whatever we can do to assist them. And we believe that frees up the time of the emergency services operators to get on to other calls. So I mentioned, and this seems like an extraordinary high number, but about 90% of the red key presses or the manual key presses that we're getting today are false, inadvertent, or looking for other services that we provide, figuring we can give them a route quicker if they use the emergency button versus the blue button. Maybe they have a roadside assistance issue where they have a flat tire and they're in a parking lot. These are all not things that we can deal with that public safety doesn't need to deal with. The other thing is, when we get these key presses, especially if there's no voice, because of our ability to plot them on a map, we can determine, are they at their home address? We can call them by phone to see if they accidentally bumped the button while getting out of the vehicle. Is the vehicle at a dealership being repaired? Is it a rental vehicle? Or is it moving and we hear just general conversation going on in the vehicle? Those are all additional calls that we don't think you need to be burdened by. And then again, unnecessary crash signals. They don't happen often, but if there's a malfunctioning system or the vehicle has been crashed, it may make repeated calls. Better for us to field those and filter those. We have had situations in the U.S. by an automaker that will remain nameless that drove thousands of calls into the 911 centers, which resulted in a notification of our Federal Communications Commission just because of the design. So these are just some things to keep in mind as Andy talks about e-call, and also to make a plug for a well-trained third-party service provider with experience to work with you as a partner. Now a little bit about stolen vehicle assistance. If we're working with police forces on a stolen vehicle, we must ensure that they're treating it as stolen. You can imagine over the years, people want to find their kid who didn't come home last night, their spouse, their girlfriend, their boyfriend. We will not disclose location unless law enforcement is treating that vehicle as stolen, or there is a missing or endangered person and law enforcement is verifying that to us on a recorded line. So safeguarding privacy is our utmost concern. And it's a tightrope to walk, especially as we work in partnership with public safety, with law enforcement, to make sure that we're not creating a product that customers think is a big brother spy machine. And so we walk that carefully, and I think we've walked it successfully. We can also block the ignition so that if the vehicle is turned off, the thief will not be able to restart it. We just recently, last week, had a call in our new launch market of Mexico, and a thief stole the vehicle. We blocked the ignition. He came back out and actually tried to pose as an engineer, claiming something was wrong with the vehicle because it wouldn't restart. And we were able to stall him long enough for police to get there and make the arrest. So there's several ways that we get alerted to a stolen vehicle and several ways that we'll get alerted in the future. Here, Either the customer, knowing they have these services, calls us, or the police force will call us because they have a situation involving what they know is an OnStar-equipped vehicle. Maybe it's a kidnapping. Maybe it's a homicide that just occurred and the suspect is in that vehicle. We will work with them if appropriate conditions are met. And we have 24/7 teams that are standing by, teams of lawyers and others that are going to help immediately so that we can help bring successful resolution. And I'm also very pleased when I talk about supporting locally. We've just recently brought onto our team, in addition to Garrett Reamer, who is from our German office, we've brought someone in from the London Ambulance Service to assist us here in the UK as a contractor. So to just give you an idea, we just have a little corner of this map currently populated with British APCO and ENA, but you can see this is a big picture of all of the partnerships that are needed to make this successful and robust, whether it's EMS understanding that we're able to give pre-arrival medical instructions, whether we're talking to law enforcement about how we can help them recover stolen vehicles, fire service, about safe extrication, vehicle fires, where the airbags are located, all of the things that are of interest to these different groups. Medical, the doctors, Terry Hall from our U.S. APCO talked about next generation 911. The data that will be possible to go into your 999 center will eventually flow to medical staff waiting to receive patients. And if they can have an idea of what that crash scene looked like, and not just a smartphone picture, but an actual indication on what type of incursion occurred on the patient, at what force were they struck, then they're going to start planning their treatment, and we're going to save money, and we're going to save lives. And so finally, I'd like to end this with a video testimonial on a recent incident that occurred in the state of Kentucky. And I'm going to let the first responders tell you how we work together.
Paducah sits just over the Illinois border, over the Ohio River. We have a very large river industry. We have a very large quilting industry as well, believe it or not. It's one of the things, there's a National Quilt Museum here.
I was actually born and raised here in Paducah. Yeah.
Lived here all my life, born and raised in Lone Oak, graduated Lone Oak.
Lived here my entire life. Can't see myself wanting to live anywhere else.
It's a tight-knit community.
It was at nighttime. It had been raining earlier in the day, tapered off to more of like a mist, but the roadway was still wet.
This is Onstar Emergency. What's going on?
I had a wreck and I'm trapped. My granddaughter's in here in the water. It's filling up with water.
We received tones from 911 dispatch that Onstar had notified them of an airbag deployment in a car wreck.
911, where's your emergency?
The call came in from Onstar. It was about an overturned SUV occupied by two people, a grandmother and a granddaughter.
The vehicle had flipped over into some form of water, and the vehicle was filling up.
I'm going to go ahead and get some help for you. I have you on Love Natesville Road and Hines Road. I'll get 911 on the line.
OnStar provided us with where the location of the incident was, how many was in the vehicle, what actually happened, that it was a rollover incident, that it did go down by a creek.
Seconds mattered in this wreck. They were having a hard time keeping their heads out of the water to breathe.
Anytime you find out that it's a child and they're helpless, you're going to push that much farther and that much harder to get there and do what you can.
The vehicle was down in the ditch, deep enough to where you couldn't have seen the vehicle if you'd have just been driving by.
The ambulance just went by.
I'm calling him back to turn them around, man.
OnStar was able to tell us that they do hear the sirens in the background. I was able to let them know whoever was close, stop, go back to where they were.
OnStar got us extremely close to where we needed to be and then talked us in the rest of the way.
We went directly to the rear of the vehicle. I could see the child. She was still seatbelted in.
Just keep her head out of the water.
And when I got to her, she was struggling to keep her nose just above the water line. Once I cut her seatbelt off, I ended up having to hold her up out of the water again.
She's out.
Support her head the best we could, and I passed her out.
The sheriff's department got her out the rear of the vehicle, but the only way the grandmother was coming out was through the windshield.
There are certain calls where absolutely every second counts. The golden hour is always, in the back of our minds. Onstar advisors being EMD trained is a huge benefit for us as medical professionals.
When we get a call from OnStar and they let us know what's going on, if there's an airbag deformant, possible entrapment, or if there's any injuries, we can relay the information to the first responders.
The data that they can give as far as the injury predictions, how many impacts the vehicle is actually involved in, what type of extrication we could possibly have, let you kind of see a picture before you get there.
OnStar provided us with the information that I believe saved these people's lives.
Had it not been for OnStar, I don't think the child would be with us today. It was 100% effective.
So with that, I'm very excited that our new frontier is the UK and Europe, and that we are going to be able to work together to save lives. And we recognize that public safety are the true heroes. They're the ones that are at the patient's side. We're merely a conduit to the good work that is being done by public safety, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.